Okay.
Okay, and inside a source I have a different model. So this is a model. What is this model? MDL, Oracle, localhost, source, and HR. So these are the different stores. These are the different data stores. So model folder contain model and model contain data store. But this model belongs to a particular reverse engineering only. Particular logical model only, because the one model corresponds to one logical schema only. Okay. So MDL. Sir, background noise, please. Okay. The next one is, what are the different components of a project? What are the different components of a project? What are the different components of a project?
Designer, operator, topology, security.
Those are not the components of a project. Those are the components of a ODI studio.
Okay, okay. And
My question is, what are the different components of a project?
physical architecture, logical architecture.
Physical architecture, logical architecture are not the components of a project. Those are the infrastructure of your project.
Module
view.
Not modules. Folder contains packages, mapping, mappings, procedures, variables, sequences, user functions, knowledge modules, and markers. Okay, so what is a knowledge module and what are the types of knowledge modules?
There are 7 types of knowledge modules.
Okay, what is a knowledge module? The 7 types are correct, but what is knowledge module?
It's ANK.
What is knowledge module?
Code templates responsible generating codes, executable codes.
Those are the code templates, because we are developing a project which does not generate any code. We are not writing or any code. So who is going to generate a code? So ODI is generating a code. So how ODI is generating a code? ODI is generating a code through a knowledge modules. Knowledge modules are 6 types. Knowledge modules are of reversing RKM, LKM, CKM, IKM, and JKM, and service knowledge module. Each knowledge module has a different functionality. We will see those in the following classes slow by slow. But right now, knowledge modules. Okay, reverse engineering. So what is the process of reverse engineering? What is the meaning of reverse engineering? What is the meaning of reverse engineering? What is the meaning of reverse engineering?
It be done through ODI.
It be done through ODI, but what is reverse engineering? See, reverse engineering, I asked the 2 types. One is standard reverse engineering and customized reverse engineering. But what is reverse engineering? So reverse engineering is the process of importing metadata, tables, data stores, metadata into models. Say this is importing the data, importing metadata of your tables. See here, what is the meaning of metadata? Metadata is nothing but what are the tables? Okay, so what are the column data type, column size, whether it accepts null or not null. These are all called as the metadata information. Each table's definition. So the metadata, the data about data. Okay, see here, what are the constraints in the table? See, primary key. Okay, this is a foreign key constraint on this model. Okay, attributes, what are the attributes in the foreign key constraints? These are all called as the metadata, the combination. Okay, so we can have any attributes. What are the columns and what is the column data type? See here, employee ID is a column, the data type is number. So we are importing the metadata information into table. We are importing the metadata information into table. So importing means importing the metadata information into tables. What else it contains? It contains constraints also, foreign keys, primary keys, and all the constraints whatever we have. Okay, in the table. So importing of that all the metadata from the sources and all the targets is called as a reverse engineering process. What are the basic components we are going to import? Is tables, views, synonyms. For each table,
Yes.
columns, constraints, filters, and all the conditions will be imported. Okay, so now we're going. Okay. Okay, so we created a project, imported all the tables from source to target. Now we are going to start ODI project component. What are the ODI project component we have? So ODI project components are, so let's see whether I'm recording. ODI project components are mappings, packages, reusable mapping and procedures and variables, sequences, user functions, knowledge modules and markers. So this is a folder. So ODI class batch 6 is my project name. It contains two folders, general underscore practices and R&D. Okay, and it contains variables, sequences, user functions, knowledge modules and the markers. Everybody is clear? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, let's see first what is the order of components development. What is the component? Okay, so now the first thing is, okay, the basic steps are topology configuration. Topology configuration. So inside a topology configuration we have a physical and a logical architecture. Physical architecture, the logical architecture. Okay, ODI project creation. So we are done with the project. So create like a reverse engineering is done. Engineering. So reverse engineering is creating model folder. So creating model folder is up to you. Okay, whether you create a model folder or not, that's optional. So model folder contains models. Models contains data stores. Data stores from a particular logical schema. Data store. Data store that is called as indirectly it is called as a table. Data store is nothing but a table. Okay. Now let's see reverse engineering. So then start developing ODI project components individually. Components. So what is the first order of generating a component? First we will create a mapping. Okay, we will create a mappings. What are the required mappings? Once mappings are done. Okay, so now ODI procedures. ODI procedures. What is the ODI procedure? We will see. If any logic, why we have to create a ODI procedure? If any logic which is not possible to implement in the mappings, not possible to implement in mappings. Okay, so when we will create a procedure, okay, so whenever you want to write a code, so which is not possible, so then implement in mappings, so then we can create ODI procedures. ODI procedure. So ODI procedure. If any logic which is not possible to implement in the mappings, then we can create a ODI procedures. Okay. So now, so once all the mappings are done and all the procedures are done, we will create a package. Okay. Right. So what is a package? ODI package is a component. A package is a collection of, it's a workflow. Okay, workflow, flow of execution of your mapping. It contains all mappings and ODI procedures. Procedures, other ODI components, project components, ODI project components. See here, components executes in an order. Executes in an order. So we can execute all the objects. See here we are creating the mappings. How many mappings I am creating? I am creating a 100 mappings. I'm creating 100 mappings. So now ODI procedures, I have a 10 procedures. I have 100 mappings and I have a 100 procedures. So now I want to create a package. What does that package contains? The package contains all the mappings and all the procedures and all the variables. See here, ODI project components. The ODI project can be a function, or it's a variable, or it is another package, and everything will be generated in a single package. So once this is done, okay, so once it is done, so test all packages, mappings and procedures individually. We need to test it individually. And so once that is done, finally generate scenarios and scenarios for deploying to test environment. Deploying to test and test to UAT, user acceptance test, UAT to production. Okay, this is the order of execution of this mapping. So first create a mappings and then create a procedures. When we will create a procedures, we will see, and then create a package and then test all the packages, mappings, procedures individually, and finally generate the scenarios for deploying to test and UAT. So there is another component called as a generate a scenario, or we can create a load plan also. Generate or load plan for deploying to test and production. So if you want any enhancements, okay, so this is the order of development of your ODI project. Okay, so now I want to modify something. So again, go to mappings, modify it, and generate a scenario, modify a package, and finally the changes, generate a scenario, and then deploy it. Everybody is clear? So what we are going to do in the next couple of classes. So we are going to start with the mappings development. Everybody is clear, please? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, let's see a small knowledge module. How to create a, what is the mapping and what does the mapping contains. Okay, so now please observe carefully and don't miss the starting from today onwards, because everything is a practice sessions only. Okay, so now what is mapping? Okay, so the mapping is an object, mapping is a component, for moving data from source to target by applying all transformations. So the mapping is a component. Okay, so basically the mapping is a component. Okay, it moves the data from source tables to target tables. Source data stores, source tables to target tables. Target tables by applying all the transformations. Okay, the mapping is a component, basic component. So what a mapping contains? So it's a, so now the mapping defines data flow from source to target, from source data stores, sources to targets. So the mappings define sources to targets. So mapping defines the data flow from source to target. Okay, so right here. So the mapping is a component for moving data from source tables to target tables by applying all the transformations. And mapping defines the data flow from source to target. So we are going to define the mapping. Okay, so now, so where we create a mapping? Mapping creates in the mapping editor. Mappings will be created in mapping editor. mapping editor. Let's see, go to the mapping editor here. Okay, so now this is, where is the mapping editor? Let's see here. So this is the mappings. Okay, so here I don't have any mapping. So let's right click and create a new mapping. Right click and create a new mapping. So I'm creating map underscore. Okay, so now table to table example. Table to table example mapping. So I'm creating a mapping. Okay, so now I'm creating a mapping. So it opens a map. Okay, so now this is a mapping. Okay, let's see, observe here. So this is the ODI navigator. Okay, this is the ODI right hand side, so left hand side one. So this is the projects, models and everything. And this part is called as a mapping editor. So this area, this is drag objects from the navigator here to model them. Okay, so this is the area where we will develop all the mapping. This is the area we will develop all the mapping. And this below window is the properties one, the properties associated with all the mappings and everything. And okay, these are the components, or these are the transformations which we will be using in the mapping. I told you, right, what is it? By applying all the transformations. So those transformations will be applied using any one of these components. If anybody asks you what is the ODI mapping component, so the component, or it is a ODI proceed transformation also. Okay, transformation also. So the aggregate, data set, distinct, expression, filter, join, lookup, pivot, okay, set, sort, split, subquery filter, table function and unpivot. These are all called as a mapping components. So this is the area will contain the mapping. Okay, so now the mapping contains, this is the overview of the mapping. So here we will write the first sample mapping using table as source and table as target. So we can write whatever you want on this target area. Okay, next one is logical flow, and then it is a physical flow. Then we will see what is the logical and what is the physical. So the mapping is, okay, mapping first, it contains a logical flow and then physical flow. So we will define the mapping in the mapping logic in the logical flow. So that's why I told you. So it flow, data flow from source to target. So the mapping defines the data flow from source to target. Okay, so the physical, so the logical flow contains the data flow from source to target. Then what a physical content? The physical content, the actual implementation of your flow. How ODI is going to generate the code, that's in the physical flow. Okay, so how ODI generates the code in the physical one. So the logical one does not contain any coding point of view. So the physical contains the coding point of view. Okay, everybody is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, so now what is the first steps in the mapping? So now first step is the mapping is a component which moves from the data source tables to target tables. Source tables to target table. Mapping creation steps is, first thing is, what are source tables? What are source tables? After identifying the source tables, okay, import source tables to mapping editor. Mapping editors, logical one. Editors, logical flow. Okay, so we need to import all the tables. Now, what are target tables? Import target tables to mapping editor. Logical flow. So we are going to define everything in the logical flow. Okay, so now logical flow. Now third one is map between. So use any transformations required. Use any transformations required. Transformations is nothing but a mapping component. So we have seen on the right hand side, mapping components between source and the target. source and target. So use any transformations between source and the target. So what are the source tables? Import source tables to mapping editor logical flow, and then what are the target tables? Use any transformations between. Okay, and then finally map all source and target columns. Map all target columns. We are going to map all target columns. Let's see. First we will create a simple mapping and how it is going to look like. Okay, now I want to create a mapping. So here I'm opening the SQL developer. Okay, so now I'm going to use. So now go to your model sources. So first thing is to import the sources. Go to your source table. Okay, so now I'm checking a employees table. So employees table, drag and drop into the source area. So this is the source area. I am dragging and dropping my table. Okay, so now I'm second thing is target table, and I'm using employees underscore target is my target table. Okay, employees underscore target table. Now I need to create a mapping between these two. I don't want to use any transformations. Okay, so this is a source table and this is a target table. Okay, so now let's see how the physical looks like. So the physical is everything on the same one only, because with these two source and target are on the same database. That's why it is showing into the different one. Okay, everybody is clear?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm going to create one more map, new mapping. So map table to table. Example table to table example. Table and employees underscore target table. So now we need to create a mapping. Okay, so now let's see. So I want to create a map. So this area, right? So this circle. Okay, so this circle and this circle, this is called as a one component. This is called as a one component. So the each component contains a 2 points. So the input connector, this is called as a connector point, and this is called as a connector point. Input connector and output connector. Input connector and output connector. So the mapping component, mapping editor. Mapping editor is a input connector and connector points and connector ports. Connector, okay, this is a connector port. So this is the connector port. So now I want to flow the data from the source to target. Just select this port and then drag and drop here. Okay, now let's see. So the select here and select this one. Okay, selecting these two. It is asking to matching between these two tables. See here, I connect. This line is called as a connector point. This line is called as a connector point. Okay, connector. So what is the use of this connector? So it is showing the data flow from this employees to employees target. So this is showing the data flow from employees to employees underscore target. Okay, so the matching. So how you are matching here? So the matching is I'm creating with a mapping. See here. So now this column is mapped to this column, and this column is mapped to this column, and this column is mapped to this column. So so the mapping connector points and connector port. Okay. So this connector point, this employee ID is mapped to source tables, this employee ID column. So that is called as a connector point. This line is called as a data flow, and this circle is called as a connector port. So that means this one is linking to this employees underscore TRG. Everybody is clear? This is a simple mapping. So here automatically mapped based on the same column name or same position. Everybody is a clear, please? Everybody is a clear?
Yes, sir.
అర్థమవుతుందా ప్రణీత్, శశాంక్, సచిన్,
అదో
మీ
దేవేందర్?
వాయిస్ బ్రేక్ అవుతుంది సార్.
అర్థమవుతుందండి
మీ
మీకు?
వాయిస్ బ్రేక్ అవుతుంది చాలా.
ఇప్పుడు అర్థమవుతుందా?
Yes, sir.
ఇప్పుడు క్లియర్ గా ఉందండి వాయిస్?
యా యా.
లేదు సార్, బ్యాక్గ్రౌండ్
వాయిస్ వస్తుంది.
ఎక్కడ
లేదు, నాకు
clear గా లేదు.
క్లియర్ గానే ఉంది సార్. నాకు క్లియర్ గానే ఉంది సార్.
Okay. So now this is a simple mapping which moves the data from this source to this target table. So what is this is the data flow from source to target. Okay, so now the physical implementation we will see. First, before going into the physical implementation, we are going to see one more time. See here. No, so I'm deleting this point again. See here, so just created, so there is no mapping. No, right click here. Okay, see the properties. What are the attributes? These are all the attributes. Okay, go to general. So now here it is showing, so the table name and the data store and the logical schema and then physical schema and the data server. It is showing what is the component type, what type of component it is. This is the data store because it is a table. So now similarly this is also okay. So the component type, data server, physical schema, logical schema and data stores. So this is called as the data flow. So now let's see here connector points. So now connector points. So now here, say one thing is I directly mapped from here to here. This is the one way of creating the connection point. Okay, but I don't want to do this one. So either using the name or by using the position. Okay, so now let's see. Now select this target. Okay, let's first this select. Okay, so the general properties of this logical flow. So see here it is the name and here in the description you can write anything. So the target load order. The target load order is if we have more than one target table in the mapping. The target load order. Please note down this point. The target load order of map. The target load order of map is if you have more than one table, more than one target table in the map. Table in the mapping. If you have more than one target in the mapping, the target table, the target load order. Okay, the order in which the target load order specifies the order in which target tables need to load. So when it is going to happen, so whenever you have a more than one target table in the mapping, whenever you have if you have more than one target table in the mapping, the target load order specifies the order in which, if you have two tables, what is the order of execution of those two tables? What is the order of execution of those two tables? That is called as the target load order. Okay, so now what is the staging location hint? What is the staging location hint? By default, okay, what is the architecture of ODI is ELT. What is the meaning? It extracts from the source, okay, load into target, targets. Okay, so first loads the data into targets work schema or staging schema. That is called as the staging schema. What is the staging schema in the data server? Staging schema, then transform and then integrates into final target table. So this is the order. So first it extracts from the source. Once extracted data, it loads into the targets work schema. So how do you find the targets work schema? It identifies the target's work schema in the topologies, the target table, either targets or sources. If you see here, so this is my target here, target physical schema. In the target physical schema, this is the staging schema, work schema. The schema where ODI creates the temporary tables are called as a work schema. Okay, here. Now this is called as a this one. So what is this? In the mapping, the staging location hint. The staging location hint specifies the default staging of your mapping. So the default staging means the temporary area where your ODI creates the object. If it don't specify anything, then it takes the target as your default schema. If it don't specify anything, so ODI takes a target as a, what is the default staging area in ODI? The default staging area in ODI is your target schema. What is the meaning of target schema? Target schema is nothing but a, here this work schema, whatever work schema you configured in the physical schema definition of the target, that is called as a your default staging area. Everybody is clear about this default staging area? Everybody is clear about this default staging location? Default staging location is your target. Location is target. Okay, target data servers. Yeah, it's a target. Everybody's in interview point of view, you just face target. Okay, but what is the if they ask more where it exactly creates the staging area, that means the work schema associated to the target data server physical schema. So work schema associated to target server's physical schema. One more time. Default staging area is your the target tables. Okay, this is the mapping, right? This mapping, where this mapping is coming from. So this is coming from the target area. Everybody is a clear, please? Yes or no? Everybody is clear? Please respond. Oh, Praneeth, Devinder,
Yes, sir.
sir.
అర్థమవుతుందా? Shashank. Okay, so now, so let's see, we are going to see, this is the general properties. Now we need to create a mapping between this to this one. So right click, select here. Okay, so now we need to create a connector point. Okay, what is this connector point? The name is, so the let's give any name whatever you want. Okay, this connected from what? So this is receiving data from this employees. See here, it's automatically connected. Whenever I removed it, it's gone. Okay, so now I'm selecting this one. So they select this, go to the connector points and select this one. So it automatically receives the data. But I don't have mappings. What is the mapping between the source to target? Now select the each column. It's mapped already. Okay. So I'm removing the mapping. Just I'll show you again how to mapping between source to target. Because it's already mapped. Earlier we selected that automatic mapping, right? That's why. Okay. Now see here, this is the mapping I have. This is the mapping I have. So this is the data store. It is reading data from this employee table because this I have a connector here. Now I want to create the individual mapping. So the employee ID. So employee, select this column and see the expression. See here I don't have anything. So I need to map from the source. See here, select this one. Expression editor. So here these are the source one. These are the source to this mapping. So now employee ID. So now this has a mapping. Similarly, the map first name, last name, email, phone number. I'm creating a mapping for all the things. Hire date. Job ID is already there. Salary. Commission percentage. And then manager ID. Department ID. Okay, so now click it and save it. So this is the mapping created. So now first thing is to connect components. These are the connectors. So how do you connect this? The help of this drag and drop of this circles. During this drag and drop of the circles, I created a connection. So after creating the connection, I mapped all the columns in the tables target. So how do you map? Select these columns and click a mapping. Select each column and click a mapping, or select the whole component. Go to the attribute. See here, instead of here, this is the one option. I can select the field and can create a mapping, or I can select the whole table, go to the attributes, and then here it is the expression. So here job ID. There is the another way. Okay, either you can create in the each individual column, or select a whole data store and go to here in the expression and then see. Okay, so now I selected the whole table here. Now here it is, see here. So now, so the name target table. So the expression is the mapping between the source to target. This is the data type. So execute on hint. So where do you want to execute this map? Where do you want to execute this map? So the here is, so do you want to execute the map on source or staging or target? So the mapping executes on what? So that means, so this column, okay, this column is going to execute on the source or on the staging or on the target. If anybody asks you, so where a mapping executes, the column mapping can execute on a source or execute on a staging or execute on a target. If it don't specify anything, so then ODI, it takes its own decision. So that is a good idea. That's why. So, but don't mention. If it is really required, so then set it. Then we will see those examples in the next classes. Don't worry about that one. Okay. Everybody is clear? Yes or no,
Yes,
please?
sir.
That's
Yes.
That's the
Yes,
very
sir.
important. Okay, so the story. If anybody asks you what is the way, where can you map it? So the mapping can be done or either at a source or it's a target or it's a staging. This one. Okay. So now this column is a primary key or not? Is it a primary key or it is a not? So then it defines the key column. Key. Okay, key indicates the column, draw checkbox. Is this a primary key or not? Okay, so the key indicates a primary key, but here I don't have any primary keys on my target table. So now I'm defining this as a primary key in the mapping. So I'm treating this employee ID is a primary key on my table. Everybody is clear? So I'm treating this employee ID as my primary key to this table. Okay, so then what is this insert and what is this update? Okay, so now during execution of this mapping, okay, so am I going to insert the data into employee ID or no? So then I can control this. I don't want to insert the data into this table. So then just you can uncheck it. So then ODI does not load data into this employee ID column because I disabled insert option. Because I disabled insert option. Or if I don't want to update it, just remove this part. So either insert or update. Either you can use the insert or update or delete. Okay, check not null. So do you want to check this column is for not null or not? So the constraints. Everybody is clear with this one? Name,
Yes, sir.
expression. Expression is nothing but a mapping. So this employee ID column is receiving data from employees dot employee ID. Where is this employees? This is the employees. How do you identify this is getting the data from this one? Through this connector point. Okay, where do you want to execute this hint? So do you want to execute this on a source or a target or staging? So this one, attributes. Now the general properties of this mapping. Okay. These are the we will see. Okay. We have so many things we need to see that we will see in tomorrow, day after tomorrow. The next almost next 5 classes is on the mappings only. We don't have any constraints on this one. We have to see this at least 5 components of this one. Okay, so now this is a mapping, the simple mapping without much details here. Now the go to the physical one. Okay, so the physicals is now the physical got changed. See here, this is the source group. Okay, what is the physical component contain? So the physical mapping component. So once you created the logical, so what is this logical mapping? So the logical mapping is nothing but a data flow from source to targets by applying all the transformations. So this is called as a component and this is called as a component. Okay, so the components, mapping components are connected by a connector ports and points. Connector points is nothing but a, so this is the connector point. So and connected points. Okay, so now the target load order. The target load order is very important. It specifies the target where do you want to execute the data. Okay, so now what is the way flow of mapping execution? So now once the logical flow is done, the physical flow. So the physical one. So the physical content. So what is the mapping execution flow? Is everybody is clear so far? Everybody is clear in creating the mapping and everything?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yesterday? హలో ఎవరో ఏదో లేడీ మాట్లాడటానికి అనిపించిందండి. ఎనీబడి హ్యావ్ ఎనీ డౌట్స్ ప్లీజ్? ప్రణీత్, దేవేందర్.
Oh, sir.
Sir, these tables are created by default or we have to create this table, sir?
That is a part of the data modeler, right? The data modeling before starting the project. So we don't need, we are not responsible for the source tables. Okay.
Okay.
We are not responsible for the source tables. We will getting the data from source, but we have to design the target tables. The target tables needs to be created first before importing. So who creates the target table? The data modeler. The data modeler is responsible for creating a target tables. Okay, clear?
So the dimensions of the target table will be same as source table. I mean the columns and the rows.
No, it's not be same. Here, for example, it is same, but in the real time, the columns can be same or different.
Okay, then there if we try to retrieve from the target again from the from the target again, the source will be different, no sir. We can't join the tables again because the
Why you join the source and target tables? You never join the source and target tables, right? See,
the expression will be changed like, sir. If we have more columns in target tables and less columns in source tables, expression, how can we express
that we will see in the next examples. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the simple mapping. Let's assume we have everything is matching. Tomorrow we are going to create a single table which reads the data from 2 tables join. Okay, tomorrow we are going to use 2 tables in the source side join and load into a table. Okay, in day after tomorrow or in tomorrow itself we are going to create a new table. It contains additional columns like insert date, update date and created by. So those we will not receive the data from the source. So we have to generate the data on the target itself. So then how to see and everything we will see in the next classes. Okay. The first thing is today concentrate how to create a mapping and what is the logical, what is the physical, what is the connector point, where to create a expressions and everything is important today. Okay. Okay. So now, so the mapping execution. So the default staging location is the target. So the mapping expression. So the expression is nothing but a mapping between source to target to mapping column. So the mapping expression executes on. What are the mapping expression can execute on? Execute on execute on source or on target or on staging. These are the two. Okay, if it don't specify anything, it takes the ODI takes the best option. So the mapping execution flow. Okay, so the mapping execution. So this is, please observe carefully. So the mapping execution concept. Okay, so first of all, mapping is nothing but a data flow. Data flows from source to target. So data mapping, data flows from source to target. Source to target to tables by applying a series of transformations. By applying series of transformations. This series of transformations are optional. By series of transformations, before finally loading data. Loading data. So data flows from source to target tables by applying series of transformations before finally loading data. So this is called as a mapping. Okay, what are the first steps? First, okay, mapping. So whenever you execute a mapping, what will happen? So the mapping. So the extracts data from source, okay, and load into staging table. Staging table. This staging table are called as a flow table. Flow table. The staging tables. This is called as a flow table. Now, so now flow table data. Flow table data. Okay, so loads into integration table. Into integration table. Default architecture, integration table. Okay, integration tables by applying transformations. So applying transformations. So here some transformations will be applied, some mapping, whatever you specified. Say here. So this is called as a source to staging area flow table. Okay, in the mapping you will specify. Say here. So the execution hint, right? In the general attributes, in the attributes here you have this one. Okay, so here if you specify source, right, so those will be applied during this first step. Extracts data from source to loading, that is called as a flow table. So here if you specify the any expression on the source, that executes in the first itself. The flow tables loads data into integration tables by applying a transformations. Okay, so here we'll apply the data, transformations will be. So the data between source to target applies the transformations on flow table data and then integration tables. So first it is getting all the data from source to staging area, staging table, that is called as a flow table. So where the flow table will be created? Flow table will be created on, where the flow table will be created? Flow table will be created on
Attribute.
staging area, staging location, right? What is the default staging location? What is the default
Target.
staging location?
Targeted.
Target data server's work schema. Okay, default staging location is the target. Okay, now the flow tables loads data into integration tables by applying a transformations. So now finally, okay, so now before loading all the transformations, by applying the transformations and data quality check also. Data quality in the sense is constraints validated constraints. So the all the data constraints will be validated on this one. So the finally integrates data into final target table from tables from integration tables. Integration tables. This is the general flow. So here before loading, okay, it's validate the another level of data quality constraints, the data quality check. quality check against a constraints against a constraint. So the finally, so it extracts data from source and loading into staging table, and the flow tables load data into integration tables by applying a transformations, and data quality constraints will be validated. Finally integrates data into this one. So here we are validating the constraint. So here we are validating the constraint. So if any errors occurred during the mapping, if any errors occurred during mapping execution, so those error records loaded into error table automatically. So those error records loaded into error table. Okay, so now here I am mentioning the three tables, four tables. So first thing is flow table, okay, and integration table, and then final target table, and then error table, right? Error table, and so loading the data by code generation. Loading data by code generation. Okay, so now, so who is going to create this flow table? Okay, who is going to create this integration table, and who is going to generate the final target table, and who is going to generate the error table? Okay, here we are not responsible for creating. So this table, it's already there. This target tables already there. Target tables will be available. So these tables, no need to create this table during the mapping execution. So these flow table, integration table, and error tables, so the remaining tables, flow table and integration tables and then error tables, will be created by ODI knowledge modules, loading data code by code generation. So these flow table, integration and error table will be generated by ODI knowledge modules during mapping generation, during mapping execution. And these tables will be, after completion of mapping, so these tables will be dropped automatically, so once the mapping is done, okay, these tables will be dropped automatically. So who is going to drop? ODI itself, okay, automatically. Everybody is clear? So these are the steps. First, loads the data into source to staging area, that is nothing but a source to flow table, and flow table to integration table, and finally loads the data. These are the default flow. Sometimes we can skip also. We can skip this. See, if your source and targets on the same database, so then this is not required. If a source and the target on the same table, flow table is not required. So that we will see, generally this is the flow. Okay, so now what is the naming standard of this flow table? Flow table starts with a $_name. So now automatically generate. And this integration table start with $, and error table starts with $E tables. So it's also called as a $, $I, and $E. $C table loads data from source to staging area, and integration table loads data from $C to $I, and finally $I to final table. So this is the order. $C, okay, source to $, and $C to $I, and then final target table. Okay, so the constraints will be validated. Constraints will be data quality. Some data constraints will be validated. So between $C to $I, constraints validated, and in the final controls, any constraint will be validated. So the error record during these steps, any error occurs, those errors will be loaded into $E tables. Okay, so these $C, I, E, the names can be controlled. We can control the names. If you see here, topology, see here, error table starts with the $E, loading table starts with the $C, and integration table starts with the $I, and ODI creates some temporary indexes. That temporary, we will see those one in the next classes. Okay, $C, I, and everything. Everything is clear so far?
Yes. Yes, sir.
So who is going to generate this? See, in the mapping creation, did I specify any code here? Did I specify any code? No. Okay, so did I specify any code for generating the $C, I, and E tables? No, right?
No.
So then who is going to generate these tables?
Data modeler. Data modeler.
Data modeler or ODI knowledge module? See,
ODI knowledge.
see, this only final target tables will be created by data modeler. Okay, in the target schema, the $C, I, and E tables will be created. When these tables will be created? These tables will be created during the mapping execution, right? So these generated by ODI knowledge modules during the mapping execution. So once the mapping is done, these tables will be dropped automatically. So the tables will be executed by mapping execution. During the mapping execution, so the tables will be created. Once the mapping is done, those tables will be dropped. So the ODI knowledge modules are responsible for execution of your mapping. Another 5 minutes, Annie. Are for mapping execution. So what are the knowledge modules and everything? We will see in a next class. Okay, everybody? Everybody is clear?
Yes.
So I will upload the class. After 10 minutes. Okay? Okay. So we are going to have tomorrow class. రేపు ఏ టైం feasible